As a passionate traveler, journeying across the country in my reliable RV, I've encountered my fair share of peculiar incidents. However, none of them compares to what I witnessed that night. During my journey, I had to drive long distances, exploring places around the country on my own. I didn't have to worry about finding shelter at all. My dad's RV, which I was using, worked just great for that matter. My RV had running water, electricity, warmth, and everything one needed to live. However, in return, it consumed a lot of gas pretty quickly, so I found myself looking for the nearest gas station pretty often. One night, as I was driving down a rural road, the low fuel light was on. With the annoying but familiar sound of beeping, I realized I had only a few miles left to find a gas station. It was almost 2 a.m., and there was no one around the area for me to ask for directions, so I had to rely on my phone's GPS to find the closest location, and so I did. It was only a few miles away, and I knew that I could make it there with what's left in my tank. Arriving there, the place was extremely quiet. Surprisingly, the place was entirely empty, and the lighting was so poor, only a few old rusty light poles shed some faint yellowish light. Looking around, I could notice 2 gasoline pumps next to each other. A few meters away, I could barely see another building, a 24/7 store. I approached the building only to realize it was closed at the time. No lights and no people to spot inside. Peeking through the glass, I could see nothing from the pitch darkness inside. I tried to push the door a little bit, but it was locked, so I just retreated back to where the gasoline pumps were. Luckily, the gasoline pumps accepted credit cards, so I could refill for myself. I swiped my credit card and inserted the gas nozzle into my car to fuel it up. As the pump started working, it started making weird noises, and quickly, a weird smell lingered around. It smelled much worse than gasoline. I didn't think too much about this. Waiting for my tank to fill up, I took out my phone and started recording the gas station. I usually do this a lot. I love recording places I visit. I eventually send those videos to my sister. She likes to stay updated when I'm out on a journey. I sent my sister the video and jumped inside my car as my car was filled. But to my surprise, turning the key didn't start my engine. I did it again and again and again, but the engine was simply refusing to start. I spent the next 30 minutes trying to diagnose what was wrong with my vehicle, but I didn't seem to find anything at all. Desperate, I took my flashlight and started walking around the gas station, trying to find anyone to help me with my issue. I walked around the area for almost an hour, but no one was to be spotted. It felt as if I only existed in a ghost town. But as I was walking around, I noticed someone on top of an above-ground gasoline storage tank. "Hello there, can you help me?" I yelled. But the man stood there motionless, and I thought he simply didn't hear me. I yelled over and over again, but I simply didn't get any response from the man, so I decided to go where he was. There was a small metal ladder attached to the tank that led to its surface, so I just started climbing slowly. But when I arrived there, I saw something horrific. The man was simply not there anymore, as if he vanished into thin air. The tank wasn't covered, as its lid was missing. The smell that met me assaulted my senses as I pointed my flashlight inside. The gasoline was entirely red, but that wasn't the worst part. The tank was filled with human parts, arms, eyeballs, decapitated heads. I was completely shook. I froze for a minute, my brain unable to understand what I've just witnessed. Suddenly, a hand emerged from under the surface. It was huge as it effortlessly wrapped my entire face, and it immediately started dragging me towards the inside of the tank. Terrified and fighting for my own life, I pulled out a screwdriver I've had in my pocket as I was fixing my vehicle and started stabbing that arm over and over again until I was released. I immediately climbed down the ladder as fast as I could and ran towards my RV where I had my gun. Armed, I locked myself inside the RV and spent the entire night in there. Every little voice from the outside spooked the soul out of me. Once the sun rose, I walked a few kilometers to find a main road. I stood there hitchhiking and was eventually let inside the vehicle of a couple. I didn't want to tell them about what happened, as them thinking I'm crazy and kicking me out was the last thing I wanted. Going through my phone, I realized my sister sent me thousands of messages and called me numerous times. Her messages were all pointing to the video I sent her, pointing out the presence of a creepy, massive man who was lurking under the storage tanks, clearly looking at me. I've been helping my father manage our little gas station since I was 10. I've never had a particularly crazy story about this, but what happened 3 months ago was nothing less than terrifying. As my dad got older, I started doing the night shifts instead of him, while he secured the morning. Just as usual, I arrived at our little gas station at around 11:30 p.m., driving our only vehicle, our trustworthy Toyota Sprinter. As I arrived, my dad took the car to head back home. He would typically return it the next day when his shift starts, for me to take it and go home. That was our schedule for the past few months. Our business isn't as crowded as it used to be. A few years ago, a new freeway was built, forcing most of the little business owners in our area to pack their stuff and leave, but our gas station was still making enough to survive. It didn't just become as alive as it used to be. I started my shift like any other day. I sat behind the counter, watching some episodes of my favorite show while giving the CCTV cameras a look every now and then, making sure if anyone needed assistance with the gasoline pumps outside of the store. A few hours passed, a few customers served, and it's around 3 a.m. now. I got bored of sitting the entire time, so I started walking around the store, stretching, my notepad in my hand, writing down any supplies that I needed to get from our storage. Suddenly, the store's computer started beeping, signaling that one of the gasoline pumps is now being used. Nothing was too weird about this, as this is a system my dad set up for the store. The system would also beep in a different way once the pump is no longer occupied. What didn't make sense is that the last beep never happened. That was weird, as most of the vehicles usually were filled in no longer than 1 minute, and that's what prompted me to go outside of the store and check out the gasoline pumps. What I saw ignited a surge of anger through my body. The pump's nozzle was thrown on the ground, with a rock that kept the nozzle's trigger stuck open, making a lot of gasoline flow into waste. I was fuming, thinking it might be someone playing lame pranks on me, so I headed back to the store and straight to the CCTV monitor, determined to find out who did it and report them to the authorities. But what I saw made me tremble. The entire time, the camera captured the face of someone. The man pressed his face against the camera, his eyes wide open with a creepy smile, as if he was filled with joy. He just stood there motionless, looking into the camera. I immediately called my dad and asked him to call the cops, as I started feeling endangered. Quickly, I started checking the remaining CCTVs. The one in our storage captured something petrifying in the background. Behind the shelves we keep our goods at, I could spot a humanoid, shadowy figure. It wasn't really visible, but as soon as I zoomed in, I realized it was the man from earlier. He just stood there, lurking in the pitch darkness, chuckling and looking directly into the camera, as if he knew exactly that I was watching him. Quickly, I sprinted towards the storage room, armed with the shotgun we keep in our store for self-defense. But what really surprised me is that the storage's door was closed from the outside, just as I left it, meaning whoever that man was, he found another way in. I thought about unlocking the door and exploring the storage, but then I retreated as I heard what sounded like footsteps coming from behind me. As soon as I turned, I could see someone sprinting outside of the store's front door. They were fast, and I couldn't capture any of their features, but I had a pretty strong idea who it was. A few minutes later, officers and my dad arrived. They thoroughly searched the store, but found no clue of that man. But to my surprise, when I tried to back my claims using the CCTV footage, I found out someone deleted every single recording, making me look like someone who lost their mind. One thing that I am 100% sure of is that what I saw that night was completely true. But it seems like I'll never get to know who that man was or what he wanted from me.